welcome to the first of our series of podcasts. This is a bit of a test run, really, just to get all the tech going on, which is why I've got Rob here, who's my go-to tech guy and editor for a lot of my stills work. So we're going to be going through a load of questions you all had for him, a load of questions you had for me, just to kind of test the whole setup out. And then going forward, it'll be a slightly different format for the content, but we need to make sure this all works first of all, and that, any feedback you have, greatly appreciated in the comments below. So here's Rob. Rob edits. Rob does all the stuff I can't do. So Rob, why don't you give us a quick rundown as to exactly what it is you do for me?
Well, for Scott predominantly is the dirty little secret known as a retoucher. So often I'll be on set while Scott's doing a shoot. We have a quick conversation about what's possible, what's best to try and fix in camera, and importantly then what's achievable if we need to do something in post-production. Because often there's a right and a wrong way to shoot things, knowing that you're going to take it into post and do some things with it. So we figure out between the two of us what's the most practical in terms of time and, most importantly, of course, the result for the client.
That pretty much sums it up. And then every other weekend, Rob is also in here helping me because I'm technically incompetent. So give us a brief insight into all the stuff I can't do that you help me sort out on a...
Well, firstly, IT is first the most important thing, because there wasn't a computer or device in this place that was on the correct firmware. So importantly, it's getting, especially when you're in the Apple ecosystem, trying to get everything to talk to each other properly. Scott uses AirDrop quite a lot for moving files around from his phone, so he can quickly pass that on to people. So making sure all of that was working, making sure that he's on the correct version of the software that we're using at any given time. So when you take one file from one computer to another, it automatically opens. It doesn't have to keep prompting to update everything. And then we get into a bit of video editing, creating some anything from sort of motion graphics to little cutaways. Organising the files is quite an important thing as well, so we can actually find the footage as we keep building a more and more of a catalogue from sort of behind the scenes, B-roll, that kind of thing. So we can easily reference and index that, so we can actually find anything. Basically, my job is to make Scott's life easier, so he's got more time to be creative and less time pulling his hair out, wondering why things don't work.
Yeah, I think that last bit sums it up pretty well. Is basically Rob's here to make sure that I can do the creative work, because I have so little skill in the IT stuff that if I got it all working correctly, it would take me my entire working week just to get it sort of functional, and then I'd have no time for doing anything else like making work, creating work, coming up with concepts and ideas. So Rob works with me on a freelance basis, and we've worked together on many different things, right through from shooting weddings together in the early days.
Yep.
Being stranded on a beach in Normandy, which was particularly fun. Right through to, worldwide ad campaign retouching for Mars. Did you do the Delhi, France stuff?
Yeah, the Holland trip.
Yep, you did the PepsiCo stuff with Doritos with me.
Yep.
You didn't do the Greggs one. What else have you done with me? Johnson & Johnson's?
Yep.
Johnson. So
boxes for those.
Yeah, so Rob's done a lot of things for me, and the benefit of this is that Rob knows how I like things to look. They have a very specific taste. So when I give a file to Rob, I'm pretty sure nowadays you know exactly what to do with it. And could you briefly or in detail explain exactly, when I give you a photograph, what it is you do, knowing what I want at the end?
Yeah, so there's the first and most important thing is, what do we need to fix and replace in it? Often, for example, it'll be shot on a reference background, not necessarily the final colour required. If you look at Scott's art, it's quite pop arty, quite bold, quite graphic. So often we'll shoot on one colour background, but most of the time, often we'll actually just replace the background completely. But it's always good to kind of have that almost correct colour to start with, because in terms of like shadows and reflections and what have you, that's all completely then correct in camera on the product that you actually see there. So it'll be things like straighten the desk if the desk isn't straight, because, with the best will in the world, wood does bow. But of course, for the purposes of what Scott wants, everything has to be razor sharp, completely level and correct. So we'll fix that, fix any perspective issues, replace the background colour, so we've got a good clean plate then to work from, and then it's then get into the products, which again, cans may have a dent in it that needs to be fixed, or there's the perspiration or things that you'll find may just ever so slightly be covering the main logo, so we might have to take that part of a logo from a different image just so that the logo looks perfect and presented correctly to the client. And then basically,
I think I'd say with the tech cans and stuff, obviously you want a dentless can. But like this one here, this is a perfectly undented can, but then the actual ring pull is in the wrong direction for the printing because they don't print the ring pulls in the same way that they print the labels. So this will be at a different angle on every single can. And you might end up going through several hundred of cans just to find one where this is in the right alignment with the front part. Which seems like a really minor thing. But obviously, if you want someone drinking out of it, I mean, this one's pretty good actually. If you wanted a side-on shot, this is perfect. But if you wanted a 45-degree angle shot, it doesn't work. So often the perfect can for the angle of the hole, the ring pull and the label are not physically the perfect can.
Yeah.
Or when we don't have products we can easily get and they get sent from abroad, often in a suitcase, they turn up a little bit worse for wear and there's a lot of rebuilding of boxes.
Yeah, especially cardboard boxes.
Yeah, but definitely the worst of
they don't travel well, to be honest.
They don't. And even when you get them like, I think the job we just shot, those boxes were sent straight from factory and we went through thousands of different items to find decent ones, which still needed, not too bad was it, but there was some rebuilding.
Yeah, it's a fair bit. It's mostly corners because corners get roughed up sort of quite easily. So again, just kind of making those all kind of silky smooth and as you would hope to see it.
So I'm going to go through some of the questions you guys all had with Rob. I've got a brief understanding of what he does and how he keeps me sane. And a lot of them are around the process for editing. So a lot of people get very concerned with, do we color grade first? Do we composite first? Do we chop? Which order? What's your go-to order of doing things?
Well, generally speaking, the way we would work is that Scott would obviously shoot the frame. Scott will then grade the frame, but not sharpen it. And this is important, just so that everything color-wise is correct. Because if you're going to have to clone or add parts in, it becomes a homogeneous piece because it's all the colors are already correct to start with. What you don't want is things that are being sent to you over sharpened, because sharpening is fake. Of course, it doesn't really exist. All it does is add highlights and shadows to the pixels to give the perception of sharpness. And then when you're working, as we often do, at pixel level, Scott has a certain penchant for giving me hairy fruits to retouch, and you have to retain all the hair in the fruit, of course. Now that could literally be sort of a 1 pixel strand, which is now a 3 pixel strand if you put sharpening on it. So it's important that we kind of keep the sharpening off, and that's the very last thing you do once the final image is built and retouched. So that's basically Scott would shoot it, grade it, send me the graded file, and then I go and do my work. 99% of the time it's out with a pen tool, because I still absolutely say there is no better way of getting a precise mask than doing it manually with a pen tool. Yes, it's the longest way of doing it, but it's also the best. And especially at the level Scott works at, commercial work, fast isn't important. The quality of work is the most important thing. It has to be correct, because this could be on the side of a bus, on a billboard, and you will see it if it's not correct. So,
and we did try it on a recent very big job. We tried using some of the AI tools. Can't name the job we tried to do it on because I don't want to put that out there. But we tried to do it. It was a high volume job, and none of them did anything of any use in terms of AI. It was completely useless.
What we basically found is that, yes, it would make a selection, but the time it took you to go in and then fix all the things it got wrong in the selection, it was actually faster just to do it with a pen tool in the first place. So, things are getting better, of course, and that will vary from image to image, but, it's more important to be completely correct. And, sometimes you'll try it and see some images, it may work, but 99% of the time we end up doing everything sort of manually.
Yeah, well, old school editing. And then on that, because we are doing such pixel by pixel editing, you obviously know that I shot with the 5D Mark II for years, which was only 18 megapixels.
Yep.
And now we're shooting on 100, and recently we shot on 150 megapixel phase.
Well, I've gone through all of your cameras. I mean, gone from the 5D Mark II.
Yeah.
You then upgraded to the
5DS.
The 5DS.
SR, whatever they call it.
Well, you had both, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then now, obviously, shooting on the current formats of like 150 megapixels. The difference is, on a 5D, you would know, as you're zooming in, getting into the pixel level, you kind of knew where the limit was because the screen just completely pixelates. Now you just forget, you just keep zooming in and it doesn't degrade. You just keep going and the pixel density is still there. So it makes my job so easy, so I can get really, really close. And you're not guessing because you're dealing with a blurry image anymore. It's just still perfectly crisp. So more pixels is an absolute godsend when it comes to retouching.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things often overlooked with resolution. It's like you might not need it for the actual final output, but in the retouch stage, especially with higher bit depth in colors, greater dynamic range, sometimes not so much in my line of work. But then, higher resolution is just so much easier, apart from when it comes to managing the actual files in terms of, I think what did we shoot last time? Was it a terabyte in a day?
Oh, yeah. The files are massive. And again, you don't tend to notice it while you're working on it. It's only when you press save. And even even though you're shooting onto SSDs and what have you, it can still take, minutes to save a file that would normally be saved almost instantly. And especially when you're getting into sort of multiple layers, of course, because, basically, you're at the point now where if you do anything to an image, if you add one layer to it in Photoshop, it's now exceeded a PSD document. You're now into PSBs, which is, an unlimited size. So you definitely notice the difference in terms of file size and handling. But it's in terms of ease of using it, you just forget that it's a pixels image.
And then in terms of like image quality, not in resolution terms, but overall image, obviously I think the first campaign you worked on with me was for Mars, and it was the tomatoes, which was shot on a 5D Mark II with a Coles Ice planar lens, to then working with when we had that 150 megapixel phase with a digital Schneider or Sinar lens. How much difference is the actual image quality as a final output?
Honestly, not that much. It's more nuanced, I suppose, is the difference. If you're expecting there to be a massive difference between 5D and a phase, to the casual observer, there isn't. And if you're looking at things one-to-one, even on a screen, it isn't that much different. It's really when you kind of deep dive and go pixel peeping that you really start to see what the difference is.
Yeah, and I think for me, a lot of it is only in post-production where I notice the difference, because I do the color grade myself, because I'm very particular about grading colors. And I find that the difference between the 5D Mark II and the Fuji is in like the density of the raw file and how much you can push and pull it before it degrades. But if you get it pretty much bang on in camera, the last sheet we didn't really add a grade at all. It was just basic levels and
exactly, just basic color and contrast. So
so we didn't really push it that far in that sense. So how did you learn editing? What was your process?
Well, that was quite simple. As I started in photography, and I wasn't very good at it, so it was faster to me to learn how to fix my own problems than it was to actually spend the time becoming a better photographer, which I did do, but it just took a lot longer. And I was already working as a graphic designer at the time, dealing with other people's images, creating everything from packaging to catalogs, posters, that kind of thing. So I was kind of used to manipulating images from a graphic designer's point of view. And then it was only when I started, the early days of shooting, which was 11 years ago now, which is the year we first met, actually.
Yep.
And then, I very quickly became good at the Photoshop side of things, because being a bit of a tech nerd, that made complete sense to me. And then that enabled me to do things like swap out backgrounds, when you're working with people, and, kind of create more kind of sort of fantasy realm images than just plain sort of backdrops.
And then one of the questions in here is, and I don't think it really applies, but I think we'll ask it anyway because it's been asked. Do you ever tell me when you see a brief that the job isn't something I should be doing?
Oh, in this case, no, because I do whatever you ask of me, basically.
Yeah. So I think for that question, I was going to ask that question because I was like, well, that makes no sense. But the fact that it was asked means that someone's interested in it. But the way the work goes is my agent will ask me if I want to do the job. And then based on that, they'll say, who do you want as your team? Generally speaking, I like to do the editing in-house here, unless for whatever reason they want there's certain editors, like there's the King, Tapestry in London, people like that, where sometimes the client will want you to have it edited by them because they've edited with them, like they've got an ongoing relationship. I think there might be some business deals going on in there as well. But I don't generally like outsourcing it to those places because I lose all control. Whenever it's gone to a big, they do a great job. There's nothing wrong with their work. But I just like to be a bit more involved. And also from a financial point of view, we make a bit more money as a studio if we do it in-house rather than sending it out.
And there's the efficiency to be considered as well. I mean, generally speaking, is that I'll be given the file from Scott. I'll be sat in the office just there while Scott's out here setting up the next shot. And when I'm kind of 90% there, I'll bring Scott in and say, right, okay, before we get kind of into the final details, how am I doing? What do you think? Is there anything else you see that you want to fix and tweak? And that's just a conversation that happens in seconds. So there's no waiting, there's no emailing it backwards and forwards and, waiting for edit notes to come back. It's all just done in real time.
Yeah.
So it allows us most of the time to get, by the time we leave the studio, whatever time, silly o'clock that might be, but the delivery's all done. It's all done on the day. That's important.
Yeah, generally speaking, if we're doing a shoot here, Rob will probably come in mid-morning because there's nothing going on first thing in the morning, unless it's really technical and we need him here to make sure we don't ruin it. And then we'll just edit right into the night. I say we will. I'll sit behind him backseat editing, which I'm sure is infuriating, and then be like, yes, let's get it all done, have it done, uploading overnight and ready for the client the next day. Not because they need it the next day, but it's just more efficient to get it done and dusted and out the door straight away than it is to wait a week and then have to revisit and try and remember what it is you're trying to do with the images.
And also importantly for you is you can then focus on your next job and start getting getting the creative juices flowing for that, rather than having this one hanging over your sword of Damocles.
Yeah. And then Rob also, whilst we're doing when we are shooting here, which is becoming more common for sure, and all our test shoots, Rob does all the behind the scenes B-roll footage as well. So when you see that B-roll footage on the YouTube videos, that's Rob's handiwork, and you edit the B-roll for. I edit all the talking to camera bits, and Rob does all of the fancy editing, which brings me to the next question, which is software. What software packages do you use for the work you do with me? Okay,
so for photos, everything is done in Photoshop, at least from my end. Scott will uses Capture One to tether to the camera to get the actual image, and then that will be exported from Capture One, handed to me, and then I'll do all of the retouching, anything that needs doing to a still image in Photoshop. So that's pretty straightforward, and that's I think how most people tend to work. On the video side of things, again, pretty much exclusively, I use DaVinci Resolve. 2019, I believe it was, when I bought my first Blackmagic video camera, and just immediately the software I was using, Premiere Pro, has been on something of a steady decline over the 10 years or so that I've been using it. And it literally was getting to the point where you would never start a project, and I think everyone here will be able to sympathise with this. It would be Scott Studio recovered _14 by the time I've actually got the thing out and exported.
Yeah.
And again, in a professional setting, you just can't work like that. It's just, and Adobe are like, yeah, we know, but rather than fixing, make it work, we'd just rather put new features in because we can sell new features. We can't sell stability because we tell people it's already stable. And then as a bonus with having bought the Blackmagic camera, I've got there is a free version already, but when you buy a camera from Blackmagic, they give you the studio version, which is £300 usually. They give you that as a free license, so you have that for forever basically. And it's a bit of a learning curve moving from Premiere to Resolve, but now it's completely second nature, and Resolve is literally better in every single metric. There's not a single thing, to my mind, that Premiere Pro now does better than DaVinci Resolve does, and it's completely stable. It doesn't crash. It's it just doesn't catch away. You can just carry on working with it. It's absolutely fantastic. And for me, it's a Blackmagic shoot. It makes complete sense because it knows what sensor the camera has and what it likes and what So the workflow is just absolutely seamless. But the most important thing is its stability and reliability. Aside from the fact, in terms of color grading, it's the best stuff out there. It really is, and the editing is as silky smooth as you could hope for.
Yeah, I'd say it's an even bigger upgrade than going from Lightroom to Capture One. Because Lightroom to Capture One's a huge improvement in color grading, and I mean in terms of tethering, it's just Lightroom's a nightmare. But this is an even bigger leap between the two, I think. And I think I was only a few months behind you going on to DaVinci, wasn't I? Once you'd got it, I think I was
that was me. I think I just refused to use Premiere Pro anymore.
Yeah. That's cool. We need DaVinci.
Yeah. This is what we should be using. And again, Scott joined the Blackmagic family as well. So
yeah, this is shot on a Blackmagic here. If you're watching the video bit, they're just really good value cameras. Like for the price,
I mean, image quality. I mean, if you were to ask a few years back, something with 12-bit RAW internal shooting. 6K resolution, you'd have been talking 30 grand for a red Monstro or something.
Yeah.
So, the fact you can get this level of image quality for such a reasonable price, it's incredible, really.
Yeah, no, I think a really good bang for buck. I can't imagine upgrading this particular camera for its. I'll probably get other cameras for different purposes, but for what this does, 6K B-raw, really nice files. Nice to grade, which is good because video always used to be a nightmare to grade back in the day, and I shed loads of money. So the last question from everyone here is AI tools. We've talked about this a little bit before, but also AI in general. How do you see it affecting the photographic industry as a whole?
Well, AI is another buzzword that everybody seems to have latched onto at the moment. Now, I'm a little bit older than Scott. Now, back in the 1980s, there was a little silver disc, quite shiny and nice, that you had music on it. It was about 6 inches compared to a 12-inch vinyl record, and it didn't play dust and scratches when you played it. Compact disc we're talking about here. Now, the same thing happened back in the 80s. All of a sudden, everything was digital because compact disc was digital. But so we had digital speakers. I'm like, it's the most analog device going. There's nothing digital about this speaker. What are you talking about? But again, people kind of pushed that in their marketing because it was the kind of current trendy buzzword. And people understood that digital, because of the compact disc, was good. And exactly the same thing happened with AI. Now, since the very first day, and I'd struggle to think of the year this was, where Photoshop introduced the clone stamp tool, that was AI way back then, because it's looking at the pixels around it, deciding what it needs to do. So AI has been with us for decades. It's not a new thing at all. It's just that the current buzzword. What has happened is that the integration of things. So rather than looking at the software, just looking at it, within itself, you've got things like ChatGPT and various others, where you say, I want to AI generate an image of a dog sleeping in a volcano. And what it will do is it will search the internet and pull resources from various different places and sort of present them to you. Which again, I personally see these tools, and that's all it is. It's just a tool, because at the end of the day, you still need to have the idea of a dog sleeping in a volcano. And this is the thing that AI will never replace: is the actual creativity of what do we want to produce. What do we want to create today? What it is useful for, I've used it once or twice just to kind of have a look at it. It's a jumping off point. It will kind of, okay, now I've seen that, I've got some ideas now where we can take this and now make this my own thing. And so really it's good for kind of brainstorming and creating mood boards.
Yeah.
Which I think, that's, and again, anything that kind of saves time and, makes your work faster gives you either more time to do the creation in the first place, or you can create, more images on, with the same time. So I see them as useful. And again, things are only going to get better. I mean, what a time to be alive, honestly. But right now, they're not a replacement for creatives. And anyone saying that it's all over, that doom and gloom and we're all being replaced by computers, and not going to happen anytime soon. I don't believe that to be the case.
No, I think I have a very similar viewpoint to that. And I mean, I think the fact that we tried to save time using AI at a recent job and it was just completely useless.
Yeah.
it wasn't even close to it. And also, I mean, you obviously don't hear the feedback I get from clients, but you hear the feedback I give to you and how specific that feedback is.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes you don't know the words for what you want and you don't know it's right until you see it. And AI is never going to be able to know when you've got it right. Like it's never it can do exactly what you tell it verbatim, but it hasn't got that nuance to go, maybe if we just try this a little bit.
It doesn't have taste, is what it does.
Exactly. Well, maybe I don't either, but yeah, that's how I feel about that. And I think we're both in sort of agreement. We're not going to lose our jobs anytime soon, hopefully, unless it suddenly comes on leaps and bounds and they find some new tech, and then we may well do. But we'll at that point, I think our jobs will be the least of our concerns.
As Tom Cruise says in Top Gun Maverick, maybe so, sir, but not today.
Yeah. We're all good this week. Now, I've got a load of questions in my notebooks here, which are from you lovely folks, which we'll go through, and I'll get Rob to chime in on a few of them. And I think you may have an opinion on it. Some of it might be a little bit random, but yeah. So the first one is, why do I shoot portraits so much? And I'm sure you already know the answer to why I shoot portraits so much. One is because of phones being portraits, and most of my work is viewed on a phone. I know this because of Google Analytics. And two is the way that I shoot. It's better for me to fill the frame in portrait and extend the background into a landscape shot should I need to, because we can do that with the way that we edit. So it's always better to have that real estate on the phone for Instagram, basically, which sounds ridiculous being a commercial photographer, but I want my work to stand out when people are going to the toilet and scrolling on their phones. That's a good time for me to stand out, I think. Do you notice people shoot portrait more than landscape? Or?
Oh, everybody! It infuriates me. I mean, I'm a purist as a filmmaker.
Yeah,
I can't understand it.
Just flip the camera around.
You know, I've never seen a TV, in somebody's home, in portrait mode on the wall yet. But I'm sure that day will come as well.
I'm sure it will. Then talking about the Cambo camera, a lot of people asking about, it's a big technical camera back there, yonder somewhere. That compared to a tilt shift lens. Now, Rob's worked with me during the tilt shift days, and we had to do a lot of focus stacking still. Tilt shift lenses are great if you're in the field, if you're tight on cash, or if you need very slight movements. But if you need any extreme technical movements, then the camera I use is pretty time saving.
Yeah, there's no comparison really. The sheer amount of time stacking images, and of course invariably some of the layers don't stack properly, so you have to go back in and fix all them up. Again, just having the ability to actually dial it all in precisely and have it pretty much 100% correct in camera. It's just the correct way of doing things. If you could, you would.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this next question is about photography certificates and awards.
Okay.
What's your view on those?
Well, there's awards are only for people in the industry. Generally speaking, I get asked 2 questions, and only the second if they like the answer to the first one. The first question is, can I see your work? If they like the answer to that, and they do like work, okay, great. How much do you charge to do X, Y, Z? Not a single time ever has anyone asked me, have you got any awards and certificates and qualifications in this? Literally nobody cares. They only care, can I see your work? And if what you do matches what they've got in their head, then it's a good fit, and generally you move on from there.
Yeah, I think so. I think I've been looking at a lot of portfolios recently from photographers who want to get signed with an agent. And one thing I've noticed is a lot of people put award-winning photographer. If you have award-winning photographer within your bio, your work better be shit hot, because most of the time it isn't. And the award is some lame award or like runner-up or something of note.
The Camera Club of the Month.
Yeah, if you got a Pulitzer,
yeah,
bang that in there. That's good.
With gravitas, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's the same with certificates. Like, there's always different guilds and boards where they give you it doesn't mean anything. It might impress somebody locally. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, and I don't know if it helps. Maybe with certain searches on Google, perhaps. But
maybe I know a lot of people put all their letters after their name, but I've never gone in for that.
Yeah, It's a bit of a different thing in the movie world where stuff like that does kind of matter.
Yes.
Still photography, I'd say absolutely not. But someone who's, of course, actually did win an award for a movie thing. Actually won a regional. It does raise a few eyebrows when.
It's different. Yeah, filmmaking's very different, and it's a lot. Especially on the creative, I don't think it matters as much in the corporate filmmaking, but in the creative films, short movies, stories, those awards are very much.
Yeah, because dare I say, the thorny issue of funding.
Yes,
and people kind of sign on to the fact that you're much more likely to get some sort of funding from someone if there's an award-winning, DP or director attached to the project.
Yeah, exactly.
So, funding is everything when it comes to sort of indie movies. So. I think for that reason, it does have a place for sure in the movie world.
And I think in fine art photography on the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as a commercial photographer, it means. So I got my dog down here looking at me, very sad, like he wants to play. It means nothing in the commercial photography world. I can't think of a single certificate that I'd want. I mean, things that do matter, like if you win the AAP awards in the UK, that's a pretty big deal as a commercial photographer. But the rest of it is pretty moot. Biggest influences outside photography. For me, I don't know. Just what I see around. I don't have any particular. I go and look at this particular artist's work. I mean, I love pop art, which is very difficult to say quickly, but I don't really have any. I like William Eggleston's photography, but that's within photography. But apart from that, it's just like day-to-day stuff. I see cartoons on TV. Watch a lot of cartoons with the kids. Well, I don't know. What do you?
Well, I mean, for stills, I mean, this is going to sound slightly embarrassing, but when I first bought a camera, I had no no intention whatsoever of ever making a business out of it. I literally bought a camera because I was recently single, had a significant birthday, and I thought, treat myself to a gadget. And I thought, well, I don't have one of these camera things. I might as well buy one. And just got absolutely smitten and bitten by the bug. And then you do what everybody does, is you kind of look around at, in your local area about who's doing what, what photographers are doing. And this is how I came across Scott. Because Scott's work just stood out immediately. It's just like, yep, boom. It's just a different level immediately to everything else I saw in locally. So I actually made a point of introducing myself to Scott and actually making a point of bumping into him and meeting him at a festival.
We did, didn't we?
We did, yeah. So that I actually made a beeline. I said, I want to meet this guy. This guy's interesting now. Really, his work's great. Like, I want to, meet him and chat to him, sort of thing. And that's how that
back in the portrait and music photography
days.
Yeah,
back in the day. Although you actually were shooting for the security at that particular event.
I was, yes. I worked out how to make more money at music festivals by not working with musicians.
Correct. So, so let's follow Scott's series on the business of photography. Yeah. So that's a step right there.
Get that plug right in there. Views on work smarter, not harder. I don't know. Do you like working hard?
I do. There's a certain satisfaction, but of course, be as smart as you can. And it's back to the whole efficiency thing. Now, the most efficient way to do an image might take you 8 hours because that's the only way it can be done. It's better than knocking it out the door in 2 hours and have the client throw it straight back at you and having to spend then another 8 hours or whatever it is, plus the time lost in between. And of course, the worst thing of all of that is an unhappy client. So you work as fast as you can, but as slow as you need to.
Yeah, and I think, we both know a certain individual who's constantly trying to get rich quick by doing everything as smart as possible rather than doing the full process. And I think there's a real risk in people who are super efficiency, hyper, all the rest of it, like hustle culture, of actually skipping out a lot of the important steps as well. Like there's a certain amount you have to do it all.
Yeah, but you only get to do that with a client once. And that's the problem. It's like you run out of first-time clients who are willing to hire you on that basis. And, any sustainable business, should have repeat custom.
Yeah, I agree. Now, we are at different ages. And this question is, I'm at 50 years of age. Is it too late for me to be a photographer?
No. I'm over 50, so.
Yeah, I don't think age is a barrier. I think what is a barrier is your work and your understanding of like the zeitgeist of popular culture. Like if you could be a 40-year-old who's properly stuck in their ways and you haven't got a chance because you just you hate TikTok. You don't I'm fascinated. I'm sure you've seen these as well. But these dance trends where people just do the same dance over and over again. I don't get it. But I'm fascinated by it. Everyone just miming the lyrics and doing the identical dance to everybody else. Yeah. It's not like they're doing their own take on it. It's just here's me doing the same thing you did. Yeah. That whole thing fascinates me. I've lost hours of my life looking. But yeah, I don't think age is an issue. I think it's mindset.
The only thing I would say on age is depending on the type of work you're doing. If, for example, you're going to be doing a 3-day shoot at somewhere like Download, it is quite physically demanding. Now, people say, it's a camera, mate, it's not heavy. By the time you've got a couple of cameras strapped to you and, some big, 70-200s and big beefy lenses, that does get on you. Once you've been, 3 days trudging the mud in a field.
It's a fair chunk.
It does take its toll on your body. So the only thing with age is that you need to be sort of physically fit and able to be able to carry the gear if that's the kind of work that you want to do. If you just want to be in a studio shooting portraits, then you could do that as long as your eyesight holds up, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think my eyesight's starting to go already, actually. But thankfully, glasses exist, so
they do.
But I should be wearing them now, really. But there we go. Someone's asked me, why do I not like fashion photography? Now, I think this is a misunderstanding. I love fashion photography. I actually represent 2 fashion photographers as an agent. What I don't like, I'm sure you know what I don't like, is middle-aged to older men who like to photograph half-naked girls who are considerably younger. That I don't like. And model photography, which has nothing to do with fashion. It's just people photographing pretty girls. And it's interesting, it's always girls. It's never pretty men.
Yeah, there's a reason that 90% of the world's photographers are men and that 90% of the world's models are women.
Yeah. I love fashion photography. I don't think many people do fashion photography, even if they think they do. I got sent a lot of fashion portfolios that were not fashion. They're just pictures of beautiful people, which is fine, but it's not fashion. But yeah, that's how I feel about it. How do I feel about Flickr? I think Flickr in 2006 was really good.
Yes.
Yeah. You use it, don't you?
I do, but I just use it as an archive because the one nice thing about Flickr is that it doesn't compress your images. So when I've kind of finished a set and I discard all the unused and undelivered images, the ones I would, that have been sent to a client or whatever, I keep a backup of that in Flickr. So if everyone should come back to you, for whatever reason, if you don't have the images, you've got the edited final versions, full resolution, downloadable anytime you want it. So for that point alone, just as an archive, it's worth it. In terms of a meaningful platform, that's terrible.
Yeah. It's some great. If you're into old cameras, there's some great information on there with like troubleshooting stuff. It is pretty pointless. It's just like same as 500 pixels, f-stoppers, petapixel, anything like that where you post your images to, which is a photography forum. There's pretty. I mean, if you want to have a career from it, if you just want to have fun, go for it.
Yeah,
but it's not where you should be spending your time. Really quick question about the tennis balls everywhere in here. They're actually for stopping people poking the wires out. I get asked it all the time. On every light stand at the bottom is a tennis ball. Although currently my puppy Teddy has got one in his mouth, which is not where it should be. But yeah, that's what they're for. So the last two questions. Firstly is, how do you hire an agent? And for those who don't know, and this is something I didn't know, obviously getting into this, but the entire commercial photography world is run by agents. Top retouchers in London have agents, models have agents, stylists have agents, everybody has an agent. And if you don't have an agent and you're trying to get into that world, it's very difficult. So you don't personally hire an agent signs you. So they have to see something in your work which is of merit and of, is sellable, is of a level where they're like, yes, we can make, you got to remember they're only making between 10 and 25% depending on the agent. They've got to know that you're going to make so much money that they can afford to have their office in Soho, have their 4 members of staff on high salaries and, all the rest of it. They're not going to take someone on who's making 50 grand a year because
10% not worth it. So.
It's not doing much for them. So you need to be making a decent chunk of change or be so talented that they think, actually, I can turn this into a decent chunk of change. And for those who don't know, I think I've mentioned in every video in the last month, I'm now working as an agent with my agent as well as still doing my photography and my YouTube stuff because I don't like being free-timed. So there's a bit of clunking going on outside. So we've got Amazon outside taking their deliveries. We'll see how this affects the audio. But yeah, so in order to get an agent, your work just has to be so good and completely different to everyone else's. Is the short of it. You've known me before agent, with agent, in between agents.
Yeah, and this
getting dropped by agents.
Yeah, but as I say, this gets back to the reason I wanted to meet you in the first place all those years ago is that, again, just looking through, the countless generic photographers from Leicester on Facebook, to me, your stuff stood out. So, and that's the game, just be different. Scott, because obviously I help with some of these videos and what have you, I keep having the mantra, find a niche, find a niche, find a niche. It's kind of Scott's mantra, it's just, just don't be like everyone. And as Scott has said before, if you're Mr. Joe Blogs, I'll do photography of literally anything you like. How do people know to book you? Because if you're jack of all trades, you're master of none. So they don't know you're the guy to do this particular style of work.
Yeah.
Whether you're capable of it or not, it doesn't matter. But they wouldn't immediately associate you with that because they've never seen you present that.
Yeah, and I think it's so difficult as well as like one-man bands to present yourself as more than one thing. Like if I wanted to also do this, that, and everything else, I would need a heap of people marketing each individual element. Like if I wanted to go back into portraits like I used to, I would need a second agent just for that. And I'd need to double up my test shooting so I was producing double the amount of work, at which point the quality falls down. Like there's only and it's not an hours in the day. Like there's more than enough hours in a day to shoot 5 different styles. It's having the time to come up with the creative concepts that are good enough to get that level of work rather than just like, oh, I've done a portrait today, brilliant, off it goes. You need that time to think and to plan and to check what everyone else is doing and where the market's going and how you might fit into that in order for it to all work out.
And stay relevant, that's the thing.
Yeah, which is always difficult. Especially
as
you get older.
Indeed, and goalposts move, industry change, I think we're almost at the point now where we're back to the 90s again. We've done the 80s thing and the 90s are now coming back along strong.
Yeah, I did notice in town the other day all the kids look like me in my childhood and I suddenly felt I was like, oh, we're back. We're back on it again. But yeah, so the last one is, and Rob can probably help answer this a bit as well. How did I transition from people to things? In terms of, I mean, obviously when you met me, I was shooting musicians.
Exclusively people, yeah.
Yeah, and portraits.
Yeah.
And weddings, obviously, because money. And weddings are like the easiest way to make money. It's just,
But once you understand that a wedding is just a long portrait shoot.
Yeah.
So that kind of fits. And I remember obviously, carrying things for you and what have you, as your assistant for the day on some of those. And everyone was treated like a studio portrait shoot was. It was none of this natural light business. It was like, no, get the softbox out, Rob.
Yeah.
All the flashes turned up to 11.
Yeah.
Power the sun. And,
melting flash guns.
Yeah. All of that sort of thing. So again, it was very much approached like a portraiture shoot would be. And of course, you got to pay them bills. And that's that. And then that helps, then gives you the time to do, the kind of creative portrait photography. And again, you very much had like your own slant, your own style of that. It didn't look like every other person who decided that was the way to go, and all they wanted to do was headshots for LinkedIn.
Yeah. And I think, when I moved into this studio, I was still a portrait photographer. I hadn't shot my first food job by this point. I'd shot a little bit of food for local restaurants as like person with Cambo, and as part of a rental agreement I had.
Yes.
Because Rob had the studio I used to have after me, and part of the it was like really cheap rent. But we had to shoot the bar below's food or something.
Yeah, that's it. So it was 2 shoots, food and drinks for the group a month.
It was a good deal.
Paid for most of the rent, in fairness.
It was a good deal. And Rob's responsible for me getting a phone call from my agent at the time, Graham, saying the Daily Mail have just been in touch saying that your studio's been raided and they found guns inside it. Apparently it's going in the paper the next day. You better phone your nan up and let her know before she reads it. And it was, I think you'd left like a replica.
Well, again, I'd literally moved in the studio that week, and I had some airsoft guns, and I'd just done a shoot for the Gibraltar body paint festival, and the theme was Fallout, of course, and computer games. So just shot a gun. Now, of course, having just moved into the studio literally that week, and was all house proud and mopped all the floors, I thought, well, let's get that off the floor and give everything a good mopping. And then I'll get a phone call the following day from the landlord. I thought, he's just ringing up to say hi and welcome to the building. He said, Rob, the police are here and they're saying there's a gun in the studio. And I'm like, yeah, there's like 2 or 3. And I said, but they're replicas, so they're just airsoft. And he said, yeah, they want to go in. I've looked, said it's fine. And the police walked in and shook it and said, tell him not to be so stupid next time.
Yes, that was just after I'd moved out, obviously, and I'd moved into here. Obviously, I think I was in London that day as well. I think I was out drinking with friends. At first, I thought my agent at the time, was taking the piss, and he was just trying to wind me up or something. But no, he was. That was the phone call he received.
Yeah, did well out of that in the actual fact. I mean, firstly, in terms of advertising, what's the real story here? Commercial photographer doing an international campaign using legit props. I thought, all that's an absolute win. And then I'm not going to call it a newspaper, the gutter trash that is the Daily Star, then, of course, got hold of it and stole the image from my profile picture on Facebook. And I'm like, well, thank you for that. Had you printed one word of truth, I'd have let that slide, but now I'm going to sue your ass. And that paid for my rent for the next 6 months. So that was absolutely ideal, really.
Perfect. That's what you want. That's always a good win, isn't it? But yeah, so minus that slight hiccup, you were on my first food shoot, which was for Mars, which we shot in here, and I was still doing portraits at the time. We did that. My girlfriend styled it. Shane assisted. Did it? Was Shane? I'm sure Shane was here.
I think so.
Was Paul here as well? Paul Bonning Tyres?
I'm going to say yes.
He must have been. He's always there.
But I say, the early days of when you were moving into things that weren't people, you always had Paul generally assisting you and with the lighting and what have you.
Yeah. So Paul was here and we did that shoot. And then I think from that point onwards, I built my food portfolio and it looked like every other cookbook food portfolio going, just like nice, pretty pictures of nice foodie food. And it wasn't until 2019 when I went on holiday with my partner for like a long weekend away in Chipping Norton, being all middle class, that I read an article in the paper and went, I'm going to change my entire style of work. And then that's what I did. Just changed it and then deleted everything else.
Yeah, you tore it down. It's just, right. Everything I've shot in my whole my life shot right away and start again.
Yeah, well, I think it literally, I think the first shoot I did was like a week before lockdown, and then I took my 5 DSR, a 100mm Zeiss, and one Bowen's 500-watt light and a reflector home, and shot my entire portfolio with just that on the kitchen floor during lockdown because I didn't have anything else to do and I was quite bored. And then I signed with the Lisa Pritchard agency pretty much straight away after doing like 3 test shoots. And then I think, no, in between that, I did some work with Bernstein and Andreoli. And then I signed more recently with Peter, agent at large, which is where I reside now as both a photographer and an agent, which is a weird twist of fate. Yeah, that's kind of how I made the transition. And I think it was quite seamless, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's quite fast. I don't think I messed around much.
Yeah, it's just like just a natural evolution. It's just the only difference is that the subject doesn't move in front of you anymore.
Yeah, it's much easier when they don't move. But yeah, that's the questions. That's the. Hopefully this has worked. Otherwise, you're gonna have some horrific audio. But next time there'll be more of a plan to it, more of a schedule, not a schedule, script, I guess.
Structure.
More structure. There'll be a plan of action. We literally set these up. I just read questions off the laptop and my notepad. But yeah, anything to add?
No.
Do we need to do a clap to sync the audio?
We'll do that after we've stopped rolling.
Yeah, let's go there now. I'll see you all later.